They didn't plan to cry. They didn't plan to shake. And they certainly didn't plan to say goodbye. Yet there they were, Jasmine and Crystal, standing before their audience with voices trembling, revealing a truth they had kept buried for far too long. Their sanctuary, the off-grid dream home they spent years building with their own hands, was no longer safe. Their privacy had been breached. Their address had spread across the internet like a spark in dry grass. It wasn't a renovation. It wasn't an upgrade. It was an escape. And the disturbing part? The very success that allowed them to create their perfect world was the same force that shattered it. But this ending didn't start here. It began in a place far more ordinary, a life that felt like a cage. Before the cabin, before the fame, before the tears, there were two women living in Canada, quietly suffocating under routines that never changed. Bills, rent, commutes, jobs that felt like placeholders for a life they hadn't lived yet. They shared the same frustration, the same longing, the same unspoken fear that the years ahead would look exactly like the ones behind them. They weren't chasing a fantasy. They were chasing oxygen. Both adored the outdoors. Both felt alive around animals, trees, and open skies. Both sensed that the traditional path wasn't made for them. And in that shared restlessness, something powerful formed. A bond rooted in a desire for a different kind of existence. They didn't know it then, but this craving for freedom would take them to extraordinary heights and eventually drag them into a storm they never saw coming. And the moment that set everything into motion wasn't a dramatic leap, but a simple, life-changing decision. It started with an empty van, a hollow metal shell with no insulation, no plumbing, no comfort, just possibility. They spent months hunting for the right one, months more converting it by hand. They weren't professional builders, they were just determined. Every cut, every wire, every bolt was a lesson. They learned plumbing on cold mornings. They learned carpentry while covered in sawdust. They learned electrical work by staring at diagrams for hours. But most importantly, they learned who they were when everything familiar was stripped away. When their first video went online in 2019, it wasn't polished, it wasn't cinematic, yet it struck a nerve. Two women choosing freedom over convention, two women sharing the unvarnished truth of life on the road. It was rare, it was refreshing. Their story wasn't aspirational, it was relatable. And as thousands clicked play, something else clicked into place. Their new life had begun, and with it came a tide they couldn't control. The channel didn't explode overnight. It grew steadily, like a fire gathering strength. Viewers saw something different in them, two people refusing to sanitize their journey for the sake of aesthetics. They filmed the magic. Sunrises over mountain peaks, quiet nights beneath endless stars, dinners made on desert sand. But they also filmed the frustration, frozen fingers fixing pipes, arguments about where to park, the exhaustion of finding water. The honesty was irresistible. And as the numbers grew, 10K, 50K, 100K, their lives shifted in ways they never expected. They weren't just travelers anymore. They were creators, storytellers, representatives for thousands who saw themselves reflected in an LGBTQ couple carving out space in a world that often tried to limit them. But with visibility comes pressure, and with pressure comes a new kind of burden. Because the road wasn't just their home anymore. It was now their workplace, and the algorithm was waiting. The van life dream looked simple from the outside, but behind the scenes, it had turned into a high-intensity business. The editing never stopped, the uploads never stopped, the demand never stopped. AdSense came in, but unpredictably. Patreon became a financial anchor. Sponsors joined the mix, adding opportunities but also expectations. Their home was a van, and their office was everywhere. Campground Wi-Fi, Walmart parking lots, remote forests where uploading a single video felt like a battle. They had built a thriving digital empire from a few square feet of living space, and eventually that space felt too small for the weight they were carrying. A new dream began to whisper to them, one that involved roots, permanence, and a place where they could finally exhale. That dream became a plan, and it was a plan that would lead them to the most beautiful and most dangerous chapter of their lives. Buying land wasn't just a next step, it was their declaration of independence. In 2021, they purchased a raw stretch of wilderness, a blank slate surrounded by trees, snow, silence. No power, no water, no road, just the promise of a life entirely their own. They built everything themselves, cutting beams, hauling materials, setting a roof before the first snowfall, installing solar systems that had to survive negative 40-degree nights. The work was brutal. The conditions were unforgiving. The learning curve was sharp. But the result was stunning. An A-frame cabin glowing like a lantern in the forest, an off-grid masterpiece that looked pulled from a storybook. Their audience fell in love with it. The Cabin Build series became a sensation. Their channel skyrocketed. People weren't just watching, they were emotionally invested. The irony? Every frame, every drone shot, every sunrise behind the treetops was a clue. And someone out there was paying attention in ways Jasmine and Crystal never imagined. At first, the shift in their videos was barely noticeable. A missing wide shot here, a cropped angle there, more indoor scenes, fewer glimpses of the land around them. Their smiles were still warm, but the ease behind them was fading. Close viewers sensed something heavy settling around them, a tension they didn't address but couldn't hide. The cabin they had built as a haven was becoming a place they guarded fiercely. They shared less, they revealed less. They filmed with caution rather than creativity. Behind closed doors, their peace was slipping, because whispers were starting to reach them, messages, rumors, hints that someone had figured out where they lived. And once a secret like that begins to unravel, it never stops. Then one day, the truth arrived in a way they couldn't ignore. Their worst fear became real. Their address was out. Not rumored, not suspected, exposed. The question that shook their entire community was how. There were three unsettling possibilities. Theory 1, the digital detective. Some viewers believe an overly dedicated follower pieced it together. The angle of the sun in a morning shot, the species of trees near the cabin, a distant mountain ridge, local snowfall patterns. Piece by piece, frame by frame, like a puzzle, like an obsession. Theory 2, the local hint. Others believe the leak began nearby. A recognizable landscape, a sighting at a hardware store, a comment in a small-town Facebook group. One local shares a detail, and suddenly the whisper becomes a wildfire. Theory 3, the malicious leak. The darkest theory is the one no one wants to believe. That someone who disliked their success or their identity dug up the information intentionally and released it. Not a fan, not curiosity, but hostility. Whatever the truth was, the result was the same. Cars began showing up, strangers driving down their secluded road, people standing where no one should be standing. And when your sanctuary becomes a destination, every noise outside feels like a threat. The dream had turned into a trap, and there was only one way out. Selling the cabin wasn't just a choice, it was a sacrifice. In their emotional announcement, Jasmine's voice cracked. Crystal held back tears. They weren't just losing a home. They were losing the place that symbolized every step of their journey. The freedom they chased, the love they built, the life they created together. They had poured their savings, their energy, their story, and their hearts into that structure. And now they were walking away to reclaim something far more important than a house. Their safety, their privacy, their peace. The cabin was everything they had worked for, and also everything they could no longer keep. But behind the heartbreak lies the deeper question, one that lingers long after the final frame. Can someone live in the public eye and still have a private life? Or is visibility a cost that must always be paid? Their story doesn't end here. They are rebuilding, relocating, redesigning their future. But the shadow of what happened will always follow them, an echo of a lesson learned the hardest way possible. Because in the world they built, one person crossing one boundary changed everything. And even now, long after the cabin stands empty, the truth remains. Some dreams aren't destroyed by enemies. They're undone by being seen too clearly.